Australians have gravitated towards Subarus for largely one of two reasons. They used to offer a unique selling point in being all-wheel drive, and the brand is now renowned for its safety as well. But the car maker is looking to become a household name for another reason entirely. This is a 2024 Subaru Solterra, the brand's first ever electric vehicle. It's a mid-size SUV looking to take the fight to segment bests like the Tesla Model Y. We're at the model's Australian launch to find out whether it's a worthy addition to the Australian new car market. If the looks of this car seem familiar to you, your eyes aren't deceiving you. This is a twin under the skin to the Toyota BZ4X, Toyota's own first electric vehicle. But this car is distinguished by its hexagonal front grille, which is closed off up at the front here, and it also has a set of C-shaped lights that is unique to Subaru. And then if you'll follow me down the side, we've got a set of plastic cladding to accentuate this car's ride height. This is a little bit of an off-road vehicle as well. The first of its kind, really. It's an electric vehicle that goes off-road. Now this is a top spec car. This is a Subaru Solterra all-wheel drive touring, and it has a set of 20-inch alloy wheels. Design points at the rear extend to C-shaped taillights. These are LEDs. It's got unique EV badging, which you'll see around the car as well. And it's also ending in these roof fins at either side of the rear window. The Subaru Solterra comes to Australia in two trim grades, the Subaru Solterra all-wheel drive and the up-spec Solterra all-wheel drive touring. The prices were recently cut even before the car launched, representing savings of $6,700 on the entry level or $8,000 on the range topper. Now, the range starts at $69,990 and tops out at $76,990. These are both before on-road costs. Talking specifications, both cars draw power from a 71.4 kilowatt-hour battery, which is said to offer up to 485 kilometers of driving range. This is tested on a lenient NEDC testing cycle. As normal for a Subaru, the Solterra is an all-wheel drive thanks to an 80 kilowatt motor on the front and rear axles. Combined power outputs total 160 kilowatts and 337 newton meters. Importantly, the Solterra has a max DC fast charge rate of 150 kilowatts. This is said to deliver a 30-minute charge from 10 to 80% capacity. Standard fare on the entry-level Solterra includes 18-inch alloy wheels, a 12.3-inch infotainment touchscreen, 7-inch digital instrument cluster, heated seats, a power-adjustable driver's seat, and advanced safety technology. The Solterra Touring adds bigger 20-inch wheels, a glass roof, synthetic leather upholstery, Harman Kardon audio, wireless phone charging, optional two-tone colouring, and semi-autonomous parking. As futuristic as the Solterra looks on the outside, inside the cabin it's not quite as wild. You'll see some interesting design points such as the high-set digital instrument cluster, that is a 7-inch screen in front of you, and also this wraparound trim around the dash. This car obviously gets a squared-off wheel, which isn't a common shape. In my experience, it is a little bit weird to use and does take a little bit of time to get used to, but overall it is a nice presented cabin. In terms of space and cabin finish, now I'm sat in this position here and it isn't the best and most comfortable space for someone who is tall. I've got my legs on the ground and my knees are quite in the air, and this is a low seat base as well, so you're sat quite low in the car. Materials wise, Subaru has gone with some interesting coverings for the interior. You've got this nice fabric on the dash here. Now this is a little bit of a hard plastic for the center console, but it does feel particularly hard wearing, and there's no flex to the trims as well. Now, this steering wheel is covered in a nice leather and it feels quite decent inside your hands. With regard to storage, obviously all the basics are there. This has a center console bin, dual cup holders, a particularly large wireless phone charger in the center console. I feel like they could have introduced a few more slots inside here, but there you go. But for the most part, it does have a slot under the center console here for storing little odds and ends, and it is felt lined as well, so there's no clattering about of your keys and wallets and that kind of thing. And with power outputs, it does get two USB-Cs and a USB-A, as well as a 12-volt port. The Solterra's infotainment is accessed through a 12.3-inch floating display which handles the lion's share of the car's controls and settings. This is a system which is pinched directly from Toyota. There is no Subaru-ness about its design or functionality. However, the brand hasn't shied away from physical buttons and switches for air conditioning and certain vehicle functions. In fact, there's a plethora of buttons to come to terms with around the center console and steering wheel. Of course, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is present for buyers who prefer that familiarity, but I've found the integrated software is easy to get your head around. Included is AM/FM radio, satellite navigation, and digital radio. In the second row, the first thing that you'll notice is the fact that my knees are quite high. This is a low seat base and a particularly large floor. So my knees are sitting about in the ether, which does get a little bit uncomfortable on long drives. But for the most part, the seat base is comfortable and I'm sat at a nice position, which does afford a decent amount of headroom. I do like the fact that my knees do not touch the driver's seat in front of me. That is in my seating position, so I do actually have a decent amount of room here. With amenities, this car does have seat heating for the outboard seats and also gets dual USB-C ports. Obviously, we've got air vents, map pockets, door trims with bottle holders, in addition to a fold-down center armrest with a set of cup holders. At the rearmost, this power operating boot paves way to a 410 litre space. That's not especially large by medium SUV standards, but the seats do fold in a 60/40 format to afford a little bit of extra space. Now the car does have tie-down points in the boot here, and under the rear floor you'll find a little stowage space for the charging cable, which does come with the car. Now, other amenities that I want to mention in the back of the Solterra include this cargo blind, which hides item away from prying eyes, and it also comes with a tyre repair kit instead of a full-size spare. But one other thing I want to mention is the fact that this isn't especially tall. So if you're like me, you'll have your head a little bit below that and it's not the best for practicality. But for the time being, let's go for a drive and see how it fares on the road. Having symmetrical all-wheel drive is such an important part of being a Subaru, and it's something that the Solterra offers because it's got an 80 kilowatt hour motor at the front and one at the rear as well. That combines for 160 kilowatts altogether and 337 newton meters. Putting my foot down now, flat to the boards, it doesn't have that same rip your face off acceleration like we've come to expect from some other EVs, but there is a decent amount of instantaneous shove to get up to speed limits, and particularly when you're overtaking on motorways. You put your foot down and there is a really decent amount of power to get you up to speed without that much worry at all. I will say that I'm not the most comfortable sat inside the driver's seat in particular because my knees are sat quite high and the dead pedal is surprisingly close to the pedals as well, so you don't have that much range of movement, which is a little bit annoying when you're out and about and driving this car. And it will take a little bit of time to get used to this squared off steering wheel, which does sit like a Peugeot level, where the fact that this car's steering wheel is set low and it has a digital instrument binnacle a little bit higher. Now that isn't the greatest sensation and it does take a little bit of time to get used to, but for the most part it does have clear readouts and it is clearly legible. With regard to vision out through the rest of the cabin, I've got a good view of the road overhead and over my shoulder for head checks, and it's only the rear window that is a little bit letterbox, so when you do look out the back mirror you don't have that much range of vision, but thankfully it does come with a clear rear view camera and it's 360 degrees as well, so you can see all around the car when you're doing tight maneuvers and trying to park the thing in a center parking lot. Another aspect which I've come to like in the Subaru Solterra is its ride control. When you're going over faster speeds and smaller bumps and imperfections on the road, this car just sort of powers through it and really doesn't upset the inside cabin experience. You're not feeling that many undulations and imperfections coming through to the cabin being transmitted through, and when you're even going over smaller and lower speed bumps and that kind of thing, the car sort of just eats it up and it's not that big of a deal. With regards to performance, this car actually fares decently well for what you'll expect from a mid-size SUV. I'm driving a little bit faster now and it holds its own going through corners, doesn't get super upset by mid-corner bumps, and the whole experience is nice and flowing without sort of jarring over corners or feeling overly weighty. Now this car is just over 2 tons in weight, so it is quite heavy, but you kind of don't really feel it unless you're carrying way too much speed into a corner, and then it will run out of traction as you overload the tyres. And it fares impressively well for what you'd expect from a mid-sized SUV, especially one that has a little bit of off-road capability. Now this car does come with 3 separate driving modes. You've got power for extracting ultimate outputs and ultimate engagement out of the car, so when you are driving around twisty corners like we are at the moment, it's probably best to keep it in that power mode. Then it does come with an eco mode and a normal mode as well. One thing I touched on earlier is the fact that this car can do a little bit of off-road, so that is not something that we've come to expect from an electric vehicle, and it is a unique thing to Subaru really. There's not that many cars in market doing that. So yesterday we were driving up a tricky hill and there were ruts and embankments that we had to go over with this car's ground clearance. It sort of just walked all over it. So the traction levels and the ground clearance that is offered by the Subaru Solterra actually does quite decently in that regard. It does come with an X mode as well, so you can put it in those driving modes if you are off the beaten path, and the car's smarts will really just understand what wheel has traction, send a little bit more power to that wheel. As long as you're being steady with your throttle and steering inputs, you will actually get quite decently far off-road in this Subaru Solterra. Subaru's claim for the Solterra is the fact that this car will do 485 kilometers on a single charge. That is tested to an NED testing cycle, which is a little bit more lenient, but on a WLTP, you will see figures like we're seeing on this car from 100% charge. It's around the 414 mark. That is what you'll get from a full charge. In terms of efficiency, this car will do 14.1 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers according to the brand, but we're seeing figures not quite as low as that. We are seeing around 20 kilowatt hours at the moment. That will come down as we start to drive this car around town and get a little bit of the energy back from the recuperation of the brakes, but for the time being, that figure can't really be relied upon until we get it through the garage for a proper test in due course. In addition to the 3 driving modes, the Subaru comes with several modes of regeneration as well, so you can use the paddles on the back of the steering wheel to grade up that regeneration to harsher, more energy recuperating levels, and it has 4 levels there, in addition to a single 1-pedal driving mode. On initial launch and initial impression, this car is a decent driving EV. It does exactly what you want an EV to do, and it's nice and quiet and compliant. Now, it does have that little level of off-road ability as well. Not every car maker can claim that for their electric vehicles. So, our first go at Subaru's first go at an electric vehicle. How has it fared? Well, on this launch drive, it's actually fared quite well. It's got space inside the cabin for even tall people like me. It drives really nicely, and it also has that unique selling point of being a little bit off-road biased. It has a decent level of ability to get up tricky trails and excels on gravel surfaces. Now, for how it fares against segment bests like the Tesla Model Y or the Kia EV6, which we do like at Drive, we're not sure how it'll go, so we look forward to putting it up against those rivals throughout the year. But on initial drive, this is a decent offering. If you've liked this video or learned something interesting about the Subaru Solterra, be sure to give us a like on YouTube and stay subscribed to get all of our future content. As well, you can read the full Subaru Solterra review on drive.com.au.